While the sun and moon endure, luck's a chance, but trouble's sure. I'd face it as a wise man would, and train for ill and not for good. A.E. Housman. Train for ill. This will help. I'm Professor Kenny Hegland, and I've spent my career teaching law. A few years ago, I put together and created a series of short videos on problems that elders and their families are going to face. Why did I do that? Basically, I did that for you. I started teaching elder law in my 50s, and I was amazed about all the problems I and my family are going to face. And I thought, lawyers need to know this, but more importantly, you need to know this so you can get prepared for the problems that may come. So in these short videos, you'll find, I try to occasionally have a couple bad jokes. I'm famous for bad jokes. But what I'm going to do is going to go over a list of the videos, and you might see which ones are immediately applicable to you. The first one is having a conversation with your family about the elephant in the room. We're all going to die, and many of us are going to get disabled, and everyone has those concerns, but very few families talk about that and prepare about that. And the denial takes a lot of energy, and you'll find if you have the conversation that things are going to go a whole lot better. In the video, I tell you how to get that conversation started, give you some ideas of topics. The second one, everyone should take a look at. It deals with living wills and healthcare powers of attorney. Now, everyone should have a living will, but more importantly than that is having a healthcare power of attorney, because those are a lot more effective, and they kick in at any time you can no longer make your own decisions. Unlike a living will, you do not have to be in a terminal condition. And the video talks about what agents you should get and what powers your power of attorney should give. The next video deals with remarriage in the golden years. Samuel Johnson said that remarriage is a triumph of hope over experience. So first of all, congratulations. Second of all, get a prenup and blame it on me. And also you got to take a look at changing your will. And there's a particular problem if both the husband and the wife bring families from prior marriages together. That creates problems that you can deal with. Apparently there are about 5 million people that are raising their grandchildren, not just doing Goodnight Moon, but actually raising them. Perhaps a son or a daughter is in prison or is a drug addict. The main thing to know is that physical custody is not legal custody. And unless you take steps to get legal custody, your son or daughter, when they get out of prison or whatnot, can legally take the child from you. In this particular little video about grandparents, we also have some ideas about maybe getting additional financial help from Social Security and indeed even from the Internal Revenue Service. Then we talk about elder driving. There's this great story about the guy who says, when I die, I want to be like my grandfather, at peace and asleep. I don't want to be like the passengers in his back seat, screaming and yelling. Driving is a very serious thing. We're all going to have to, at some point, give up driving. This video talks about some tips about how to make it safer to drive, but also to confront that situation when we actually do have to give up driving and what steps we should be thinking of. The next video is sex. It ain't over yet. That's the good news. The bad news is that neither are sexually transmitted diseases. And in this video, we talk about consent, what's consent when people become dementia, and various things like that, sex in the nursing homes. By the way, we have no photos or we have no links. If you're taking care of an elderly, if there's an elderly person in your life, maybe they are becoming a couch potato, they're grouchy, they sit on the couch all day, they're depressed. First thing not to do is say, oh, cheer up, get over it. Depression is medically caused and can be cured in many, many people. A lot of times, the first thing to do would be to take all the drugs they are taking and show them to a pharmacist, because they may be interacting badly. If there's a serious drinking problem, interventions are possible. Then we have a short video on Alzheimer's and dementia, and that's very scary. The thing to realize is that if someone looks like they're losing legal capacity, there are things you should do now to take care of things in the future. Financial decisions will have to be made. Healthcare decisions will have to be made. See a lawyer about setting up certain powers of attorney to deal with that. Other than that, you're going to have to get a guardianship, and those are expensive and complicated. One thing you will be called upon to do, and this video I think is very important, it's about deciding for people who can't make their own decisions. You may be called upon to do that tomorrow. Somebody may be in an automobile accident, and medical people will ask you, what should we do? We talk about how do you go about making those decisions. Two very important points. One is that if this person is someone in your life, whatever you decide is going to have some impact on you. Everybody always has a dog in the fight. The thing to do is to realize, how is this going to affect me, and articulate that and think about that. You might want to deal with that. The other thing is that your interest will distort your judgment more than it will corrupt your heart. That is, your interest may lead you to believe that a good choice, which really isn't a good choice, rather than thinking, I'm going to do this because I can make money. It's not going to corrupt your heart, but it's going to impact your judgment. Then we talk about death in the family. We'll find that mourning is not something you get over with. You're going to talk about funeral arrangements, what you have to do. And I give talks on this subject. And at one point I was talking about you don't want to expend a lot of money on funerals. And there was a guy in the back of the room that looked like he was very irritated with me and wanted me to talk about Roth IRAs or whatever. But I finally called on him, and he said, well, when my mother died, the funeral homes kept trying to sell me a very expensive casket. And I said, no, she's dead. She doesn't need that. And after a long-term argument, he gave up and said, okay, well, how about a nice pillow? The next topic is basically bad guys prying upon the elderly. And we have a segment on elder or identity theft and scams. And we talk about some current scams, how you avoid scams, how you should hang up on people. The main thing there is not to blame yourself if you do get cheated, because we all get cheated at one time or another, including graduates from Wharton. The next topic is very serious. It's elder abuse. If you suspect that an elderly person in your life is being abused, what can you do about it? We talk a little bit about the signs, how you can get the person talking, how you can reassure them. And we even have something on caregivers, because caregivers usually become abusive, not because they want to abuse someone, but because they come to the end of their rope. And so we advise them to get time off and things of that nature. Then we take a look at bad decisions we all tend to make, flying off to Vegas. And that, by the way, is absolutely terrific and legitimate as long as you have mental capabilities. You can, as an adult, and if you are legally competent, burn your candle at both ends, even though it won't last the night. But there are more serious things: booze, suicide. Any elder that's threatening suicide, take that seriously. And we also talk about the problem of guns in the home. And I think that that's something to be considered. Then we have a segment on finding help. One is getting a lawyer. What should you look for in a lawyer? There is now an association of lawyers that are specializing in elder law, and we tell you how to get in touch with them. The next segment deals with talking to your doctor. And there's a lot of research that suggests that oftentimes doctors make mistakes in their diagnosis. There are a series of questions that you can ask your doctor that will make sure that your doctor is getting it right. One thing that's very important is that there are a lot of situations where someone comes out of the hospital, an elderly person comes out of the hospital, and then is in a couple of weeks is readmitted. Not for the same thing they went into, but because the person taking care of them didn't get it right. They didn't quite understand how to care for the person after they got out of the hospital. So be sure you really know and spend time doing that. Then we look at retirement, and we talk about volunteering. And there's a saying that if you're volunteering and if you're helping somebody, you can't be depressed. You don't have time. And so we suggest different ways, different opportunities, where to find opportunities to volunteer. And one thing you might want to do is to try something new. You know, if you were an accountant, maybe do something different. Join the circus, who knows. We also then take a look at reverse mortgages. And before that, we have a segment on home care. If you're getting older or if you're dealing with an older person, take a look at that. There are simple steps that you can take to make your house a lot safer for the elderly person. And those are really, you'll prevent a fall and hospitalization and pain. Then we do take a look at reverse mortgages. I could have worn my leather jacket, but I didn't. But we talk about, you know, explain what they are, some of the dangers and some of the alternatives to get money. Then we take a look at kind of the legal stuff, the real legal stuff, estate planning. First thing is, do you need a will? A lot of people don't need a will. Wills start off with the statement, being of sound mind. That is known as a sanity clause. And in the movie Duck Soup, one of Groucho's brothers said he doesn't believe in no sanity clause. But in any event, the people who really need a will are parents of small children. Because if they were both to die, then the court has to decide what becomes of the children. And it's very good to have a will that says, I'd like so-and-so to get the kids. And that can be really helpful. Not necessarily the judge is going to do that, but that will really help. The next topic is avoiding probate. Avoiding probate should not be your goal in life. Avoiding probate is much easier than it was in the time of Bleak House and Charles Dickens. It's a lot cheaper, and there are a lot of ways to avoid probate, and we'll talk about them, but do them because they make sense, not necessarily because you're going to avoid probate. By the way, avoiding probate does not mean you're going to avoid estate taxes, but estate taxes don't kick in until you're a millionaire, so probably most of you don't have to worry about that. The next thing is, if you have some grandchildren that you would like to leave money to, or if you have a mentally disabled relative you'd like to leave money to, but are afraid they're going to misuse it, you can set up a trust. And trusts are amazingly things. You can do amazing things that your lawyer can tell you how to do that. You can have trust for their education or whatever. The last thing we look at there is living trusts. Living trusts are magnificent, really good. They're highly recommended by most elder law lawyers. Don't go to a free lunch and sign up there. They are very complicated. They're very serious. What you do with a living trust affects you and your family for generations, okay? And it's not only signing documents, but you got to transfer property into the trust. So go see a lawyer. Our last topic is disgruntled heirs. I mean, maybe you think that there was a will that cut you out improperly. Actually, the people who usually can win these cases are spouses who were forgotten, or children, even illegitimate children, who were forgotten. There's a famous case, by the way, in New York, where the nephew murdered his uncle and then showed up in court to try to get some of the money out of the will. And the judge said, you can't do that. You can't profit from your own wrong. So I guess you don't have to, when you're drafting your will, you don't have to provide, I want to give my nephew $20,000 as long as he doesn't murder me. Okay, that's basically an overview of what are on these videos. And I know if you look at them, some of them, your life is going to be better. Things are going to go better. And that really makes me really happy to know that. Let me talk about two books very quickly. The first is A Short and Happy Guide to Elder Law. And a lot of these remarks came from that book. I wrote it with Robert Fleming, who is one of the nation's leaders in the elder law movement. All of the insights are his. All of the bad jokes are mine. The other book is a novel I wrote called Law School Chronicles. And the reason I did that is my wife said, I was getting antsy because I didn't have enough to do. But this book is about a law professor trying a wrongful death case with his daughter, who's a criminal defense lawyer. And if you get it, I think it's entertaining, but the main thing is you'll learn a lot about civil law. You're going to learn a lot about law and how it comes to be. You're going to learn a lot about legal education. And believe it or not, you're going to learn a lot about lawyer ethics. And so I recommend both of those. They're both on Amazon. And again, I hope you enjoy the videos. Thank you.